Welcome back, Raw Thoughts listeners, to another episode with me, Mackenzie Tiggs. Today, I'm just going to tell you better saddle up and be ready for some amazing things. I've got Matt Todd with us. Matt, thank you for coming on.
Thank you, Mackenzie.
Yeah,
God bless you, girl.
Oh, thank you. Super fun. We got connected through Matt Schneider with the Ubuntu community, and it's already been just a hoot being able to talk with you off camera. So tell us a little bit about yourself, what you're doing. You've got your own podcast. Like, you got a million different things going on as well.
Yeah. Well, again, thank you genuinely for having me on. It's such a treat to be able to talk to a creative type, somebody who's also kind of going through the same journey. I mean, because the reality is the number of people that successfully grind through creating something, right? Like, it doesn't even matter what it is. Most people try some manner of creativity, like, I don't know, like baking. Like you see like some long, can I swear on this?
Yes, you can.
Okay. Some fucking like long fermented sourdough. And they're like, oh, I'm going to make some sourdough bread and it's going to be great. I'm going to like cut little like things into it. And then they try it and it looks like a pile of dog shit and it tastes worse. And they're like, oh, that's it. Because that's the nature of people's, gumption and grit when it comes to creativity. They're hypercritical. And the second it's not awesome, they just give up. So meeting someone who's gone through the trials like you have and is coming to the back end of it, it's like, I'm there. Like, I'm making something. I don't necessarily know 100% what it is, but I'm clearly making it. It's beautiful. So thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm just a dude who's trying to just get there. It's essentially, so I was an educator for almost 20 years. Into jiu-jitsu. I started training a long time ago before it was cool, and it's just been this grind of learning and just getting the hell beat out of me professionally and athletically, and then like having kids and like just grinding through life, which is a really interesting thing that I think most people don't find value in. But for me, it's like the grind is why you get up.
Yeah. And I think it's the difficult parts that people want to give up, but it's like that's where you start making it, is when you can push through those times. Like, no, I haven't wanted to come and record every single time with my guests. Like, I do you, right? You're fucking hoot. But like, sometimes it's difficult. There's life happening outside of this podcast. There's decisions happening outside this podcast. But I understand the bigger scheme of it is like, I've got to do it. I know this is making impact, and I have to keep going. And like, that's why I do it.
Okay, but here's the thing. If it wasn't a grind, the value to you as a person would be so minimal. And this is such, all right, so I interviewed this teacher once, right? It was like the heat of COVID. It's terrible. It's 2020. I think it was like fall 2020. And I knew this teacher and I wanted to invite her, and I'm like, okay, let's have a conversation about what teaching is for you and, how you're being impacted by this. Again, as an educator, I was really excited to talk to another educator. And this woman comes in, and it was like the most painful conversation of my entire damn life, because she was not interesting to talk to. She didn't have a lot of like philosophical insights into teaching or interesting thoughts on it. And it was the conversation was an hour and a half, because I was like, we got to make it to the hour and a half mark. We got it. And I was like pulling teeth to get through it. But that, to me, that was one of the most important podcasts that I did in my earlier years. It was like, listen, if you just give up when it's easy, like if you just called it at like 45 minutes or a half an hour, you're like, well, thanks, everybody. Then it was like, what are you doing?
Right.
And again, you get that, like baking, or you get in jiu-jitsu. Like, the whole point of going to jiu-jitsu is that it's hard. The whole point of doing something difficult is that you become a different person, right? You did a podcast recently that I listened to that I really enjoyed about fuck happiness.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, and for the people listening, if you haven't listened to it, I think it's great. It's only about 2 minutes long, 3 minutes long. But the draw, okay, you saw the movie Pursuit Happiness, yeah? Will Smith?
Yeah, long time ago.
Right,
yeah.
Right. And he like goes through hell.
Yeah.
It's like this whole thing. He's like living in the subway, and he's got a son. And he gets to the end, and you're like feeling it, and he gets the job, and he's like, this little moment is happiness. But the whole point of the movie should have been, again, the pursuit. Right. It wasn't happiness that made the movie. It wasn't that one moment. And that one moment wasn't even happiness to him without the juxtaposition of sleeping in the subway. It's like, if you want happiness, stop looking for happiness. Find the hardest thing you could possibly do. Do that as hard as you can, and you have a shot at having a moment of happiness. And it's just, especially with a creative thing, like you're saying, 90 episodes. Here we are. We're grinding through, and it's like you're gonna have a tiny moment of happiness at some point. It's such a difficult thing, I think, for people to conceptualize.
Well, and I think too, I had this conversation multiple times recently where on my Instagram I had posted, how many views I had. It's like 76,000 views, and I'm like, I'm stoked for that, right? Like, I'm stoked for that number. Am I going to be stoked when I make it to 100,000? Absolutely. Am I going to be stoked when I make it to 1 million? Absolutely. But I couldn't get to the 76,000 if I hadn't started with the first episode and the 13th episode and the 54th episode. Like, all of those things are where the fulfillment comes in. It's not necessarily happiness that, and that's what you're referring back to is like, fuck happiness is like, so that's, I'm only chasing one emotion. I can only feel great if I feel happiness. It's like, no, I feel fulfilled. I feel at peace and joy and like true inspiration to myself that I have continued. And I look at my life and I'm like, all of that bullshit is happening in your life and you're still pushing to your podcast. Like, that's inspiration. Like, I don't have to sit here and tell people, be like, be inspired, go do what you want to do.
Oh my God, the inspiration porn, the hustle porn.
Like, go do it. Like, do I talk about those things? Yeah, but like, what is behind it? There's always a story behind it. There's always a story of like why you're truly doing these things. And sometimes, like you said, sometimes you don't fully know, but you gotta take the action. You have to fucking try, or you know the answer. You're not doing anything.
You know what? I think one of the frustrating things too, especially like 76,000 views is unreal. But the average person only interacts with, I don't know, it's like 3 podcasts, right? And I'm not saying the top 3. I'm just saying they in general, like, not many people listen to more than 3.
Right.
Like, nobody's listening to 20. You just
Right.
don't have time unless they're like micro episodes.
Right.
So the vast majority of people get funneled into like a very select number of podcasts, and that each get, like 100,000 or 1 million views or downloads or whatever it might be. It's such a frustrating thing to grab a win for yourself when the rest of the world judging your success is judging it against this other thing. You're like, but you don't understand. Like, to get 76,000, to get 8,000, like 1,000 people listening to you. Could you imagine being in a room with 1,000 people who are like, Mackenzie, we're all here for you. Like, what do you have to say today? And it's like, let me ask you this. How have you managed to continue finding meaning and fulfillment when all the metrics that you would normally judge a successful endeavor by don't apply to like the podcast world? Because the things we know to be true, it's like, oh, you have to have 1 million people, or you have to have like, all these listeners, but still finding value and relevance for yourself in helping like one person. Like, if your podcast you do like saves one person or gives one person perspective or just a slight reprieve from the shitty life they're living, like, how do you remind yourself of that to keep going?
I think it's with the help of other people reminding me. Like, I really love when people are able to message me and tell me like, hey, that impacted me, or said, hey, my brother-in-law was on your podcast and like our family appreciates you for allowing that time for him to speak. This was so fucking wild. I'm going to tell you this story because it literally happened yesterday. I got a message from a girl my ex-boyfriend cheated on me with. And she writes me on the podcast, and she was one of the people that had told me about him cheating. And she says, hey, you had my boyfriend's brother-in-law on the podcast, and I just wanted to tell you thank you for having him on and sharing the story. And I was like, holy fuck. Like, is that a shitty part of life that comes up? Absolutely. But like, I am so happy that I'm continuing to do this because I know that story meant something for him, and he's still talking about it, and having people reach out to me and say, like, I got my child into therapy because of something that you said on the podcast. Like, those things, those interactions with me is like, that's why I keep fucking doing it. That is why I keep doing the hard things. Like, and it is something that I have to remind myself of. It's something that I don't look at the analytics all the time. I don't give a shit. Like, I literally don't. It's just like, studies, like statistics. It's like, cool. You're only talking about those certain people in the statistics. What about everybody else? What is actually further beyond the numbers? What are the feelings? What are the emotions? Like, that's the part that the world has forgotten about. And they're like, well, what about this statistics? I'm like, I don't give a fuck. What about this story? What about this person? What's actually happening? You could make whatever study you want. You can make whatever results you want. But what's actually fucking happening?
Man, I had a excuse me. I have a dear friend. This guy Jerry, years ago, training jujitsu with him, and jujitsu for me is a lot. It's a lot of me for a lot
You're
of
a freaking
reasons.
black belt. Let's talk about that. Throw that
Yeah,
out there.
but it's not. I was telling somebody yesterday. It's like it's a spiritual thing for me. It's not my competence, and yes, my competence is there. It's like if you want to learn jujitsu, I am the most important person. I have what you want to know, right? And like, where else in the world is that, right? Like, who are you going to run into in the street? They're like, oh my God, Mackenzie, you have exactly what I need. Like, in not an inappropriate way. Like you have, like, please teach me. Like, what is that thing? Very few people have something that another human being would be like, you know something I need to know. And I know it's going to take years and it's going to be really hard. Can you please teach me? And so for me, I take that very, very seriously. And there aren't many places where the average person has that kind of value. When I stopped teaching, it threw me into probably one of the darkest periods of my entire adult life, because all I had been doing was helping kids get into college and doing SAT prep from the week I graduated college until about 2 years ago.
Wow.
Right. So it just disappeared. It's like, well, what are you? You had this value. You had these people that would come to you. You had this thing to offer the world, and now that's gone. And so years ago, this guy Jerry, who we're training with, he's an older guy, and he was like in his mid 40s, and I was 30 at the time, or somewhere around there. And we go out to get a beer. A bunch of guys training. We go out to get a beer after training, and I was like, Jerry, you married? I don't really know him, and he's like, yeah. I'm like, you happy? And he's like, no. I was like, oh shit, because like that was just like my standard joke. I'm like, you happy? He's like, oh yeah, my wife's paying. He's like, no. I was like, oh fuck.
You're like, what do I do now?
Okay, like, where do you follow up? It's like 8:30 at night. You just got done training. You got a beer in your hand, and you realize like, oh shit. So Jerry is in the midst of a divorce. I find out he's got 3 girls, and they're wonderful. And I realize after leaving that, I'm like, this is a guy at the end, because the probability of somebody committing suicide, a man in particular, they're getting divorced after like 10 years. They're losing their kids. They're losing, and again, I'm not here to get into the dynamics of divorce agreements, but in general, they're losing half to 60 or 70% of the things they worked for. And of course, the counterpoint's like, okay, but his wife was at home working with kids. Fine. But that throws a lot of people into such a tailspin that it's the end. And having that experience with him at the bar, we were just at a brewery. I was like, oh shit, this is somebody who needs something. So the next day when I went and trained and Jerry was there, I grabbed Jerry. I was like, hey, let me show you this thing. Like this, I don't know, it was like a half guard pass or something. It was like, okay, you're doing this really well, but you need to change this. He was like, oh, thanks. So every time I went, I'd grab Jerry. I'm like, Jerry, come here. Give me 10 minutes. Work with him. He kept training. He's great. He's still training. And over the course of the next couple years, generally when it's my experience, when you have like a 45-year-old who's not bad looking and has some money, they just start going out and like playing the field, right? They're like, oh, this is what's been missing from my life. I need to go get some action. Jerry completely committed himself to jiu-jitsu. He lost like 30 pounds. He didn't go on dates. He didn't mess around. He was committed to improving himself through the most grueling and horrifically painful endeavor that I've ever done. And I've done a lot of sports. And through that, he became this person that his daughters realized. They're like, oh, Dad, you're the man. Not because you do jiu-jitsu, not because of this, but because you're not ordering DoorDash. You're cooking us rice and beans and chicken. You're not getting babysitters and going out like Mom is doing. Like, you are working on yourself. You're in it for the suck. You're here for every little bit of it. And he became this person to his children. And he saved them and they saved him from this, like, marriage is really hard. And I have 3 boys, and I've gone through some very dark times with my wife, and my parents imploded, and my grandfather's relationships imploded, and I don't want that for my kids. So I understand that it's very, very hard, and just recognizing that your salvation is not through drinking, it's not through the door dashing, it's not through, you know, sending your kids to therapy and not talking to them. It's sitting in the shit with them and being like, we're in it together, you know, whatever that is. And I mean, so when you talk about saving one person, it's like, you gotta save. You start small, start as pathetic as possible. Try to get your shit together first, and then maybe help one other person. Man, it's a difficult thing to wrap your head around.
It is, and I think so many people, you know, they have this mindset when they speak or they do these encounters or are on a podcast, and they're like, if I just save one life, like I've done it. And I'm like, no, not me. I have more than one life to save. I have millions of lives to save, and I don't always have to know it, and I won't ever always know it. But whoever is listening to this will pick up something that reflects on their life and what they're going through. And that's what my hope is that they can hear you say, you know what, you know, you're not sitting here instructing them what to do. You're giving them a story and showing them, hey, this man was in a divorce. It could have gone the other way, right? Very easily, it could have gone the other way, because we've seen a lot of divorces go that way.
Right.
I've never been married. You know, I've seen a lot of divorces.
Divorce is everywhere.
It's everywhere.
And the decisions people make are everywhere.
There's so many. And it comes down to, like you said, your decisions. What am I going to do? What did Jerry do, right? He decided to do things for himself. What did that involve with cooking, you know, taking the time for yourself, not bringing other people around? Now, is there times in everybody's story that it's not going to be this way? Absolutely. Like, there isn't a one-way fits all for everybody. That's why this podcast is so diverse, is because there's not one way to do divorce. There's not one way to do marriage. There's not one way to do a podcast. So yeah, I want diversity. I want other people's stories. I want other people's ways of showing, like, this is what I was in, this is where I've gone, and this is where I'm going. Pretty simple, right? And through that, there's endless amounts of decisions, because every single day, every single moment, we have a decision. And, you know, talking about that is difficult. And I think what you experienced at that bar, and so many people do, is they'll ask a question and then they don't realize the answer, and they're like, oh, I don't know what to do.
Right. You
They
get
freeze.
an actual honest answer, and you're like, oh shit, what do I do?
Yeah.
I thought he was just going to be like, yeah, it's fine, whatever, my wife annoys me. He's like, no, I'm in hell.
Yeah.
Like,
right. And people don't, they freeze because they don't know what to do. And I will give you a tip. Ask them about it. They will open up. They need to open up. They want to open up. And if they just say, hey, I'm not ready to talk about it right now, cool. Check in with them in a week, right? Also, the person going through it, like you asked him truly how you were doing, right? He can feel like, hey, you know what? Like, he's there for me. Like, just like you gave him advice for jiu-jitsu, if somebody is in a similar situation, help give advice. Be like, hey, you know what? I know somebody else that has been in this same situation. I'm going to connect you because maybe you guys can help each other. Like, that's where we're supposed to be humans and truly be able to bring support. You're not supposed to be doing this life alone. You're not supposed to be going through these struggles alone.
right.
There are people out there. It doesn't have to be a therapist. It doesn't have to be a counselor. Like, find people that have been in similar situations and ask them, what did you do? What advice could you give me? Like, I ask, God, one of my favorite things is to ask older couples, like usually in their 70s, like, what's the key to their marriage? I'm not asking to marriage. I'm asking to their marriage. And answers have been completely different every single time. And me, I'm like, oh, that's just data, right? That I'm just connecting, or like grabbing all these data points, because I don't know what will be mine. I don't have a boyfriend. I don't have, you know, I have past relationships, but like, I don't know what is going to be the key to my marriage, because it's my fucking marriage. I don't know.
Right. And we all, I mean, marriage is horrific. Like, it's just, look, I'll be really honest with you, and I've never even chatted about this stuff on air, but like the institution of marriage, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing? There was a pizza place back in California that I'd go to occasionally. I don't even think it was that great, but it had an outside bar, and they set up a big tent in the parking lot over COVID. Anyway, it was called Primo's. Primo's pizza sucked, but whatever. The point is, everyone would go to Primo's. It was like, oh, let's go to Primo's right in downtown. And I always relate marriages like, listen, Primo's, for as bad as their pizza is, they have to fight for every customer. That's just the way it is, right? And like, you got other places. You go to Zachary's, you go to wherever you want. It doesn't matter. But, Primo's has got competition. If you told Primo's that you were going to eat Primo's pizza every single week for the rest of your life, and you promise you never fucking eat any other pizza, no matter how shitty I think Primo's pizza is, it would get a little bit worse after that conversation. It would just get a little bit worse. And this is not some like sexy innuendo. It's just like, if you promise somebody that they won't do anything or couldn't do anything that would drive you away, first off, that's a total lie, right? Because there's plenty you could do. Say you and I are married. You gamble away every single penny we have and go out and do like a line of Coke as long as like, I don't know, something. I'm like, all right, Mackenzie's gone fucking crazy. Like, it's over. Like, we had a good run. You're not who I thought you were, and I'm done. And people will be like, yes, you're done. She spent all your money, all your collective life savings, and did the line of Coke. Like, you're done. You're like, yeah, look, justified. So everybody first off knows the marriage vows are a lie, because it's not till death do us part. It's till you offend our life, our shared value set. All right, so that's out. Second, you become a worse person. And not necessarily intentionally, but if you know, like, if you want the best out of somebody, you want like the best NFL player, you don't tell them that they're guaranteed to start. You tell them they got a shot, but it's always at risk. Like, marriage is an institution, and it's not like I dislike my wife. I love my wife, and I am married, and I'm happy to be married. But it's like, the idea that you would make that commitment to someone, why? Like, Primo's is going to deliver shittier pizza, or they're not going to worry about it. And it's all fundamentally the premise is a lie, because we know it's not even death do us part. You're just operating under those assumptions. It's so damn weird, and people get betrayed and hurt and disillusioned. And, oh God. I don't know where we're talking about this now, but like, it's just so dark, I think, for the average person. That's where the relationship, especially with your kids, in my mind, gives you both the potential to be the best person you will probably ever be, because it's so fucking hard, and the potential to just end your life. Like, because you want your kids, you want to raise your kids, you're a super person to your kids, but they will literally push you to the end of your existence. And then you're just like, I can't take it. And then if you get divorced and you lose your kids, and that was the thing that was the only thing holding you together in life, Jesus, man, what a horrific endeavor.
Yeah. It gets, there's a lot of challenging, and you've spoke a couple times about like you being in dark spots in your adult life, right? Like, how has that impacted your marriage? Because you have, right, you being done with your studies, like, that had nothing to do technically with your wife. Like, that was you, that was your purpose, that was what you were doing, that was your own mental health. Like, that impacts a lot of other people though. So like, how did you deal with your struggles that you haven't endeavored, and having a wife and having children?
Oh man. Okay. I remember this day. I'm in class. I got 6 kids that I'm working with, and I'm having such a dark day. And I was so real with my students. It was one of the reasons why I think they enjoyed coming to class. I was having such a dark day that I literally started going into, if I got hit by a bus on the way to class, I wouldn't fight it. And if the kids were like, wait, Matt, you have kids. I was like, I've done right by my kids. Like, they are fine. They have a good mom. It's financially, they're fine, right? Like, I was almost in tears. I was like having a breakdown in class. And I did feel this way. I did. And I have people very close to me that have gotten very sick and have been in such difficult relationships that they're like, I'm not even going to get treatment. This is my exit.
Mm-hmm.
And you hear that and you're like, God, how could that be? And then I have a moment like I had in class and I was like, oh yeah, if somebody gave me an exit right there, I would have thought about it. But you keep saying there's no one way. I agree with you. There's no one way to get out of that. But you have to keep going. That's the only way that you're even going to get a shot at getting out of it. You know, and of course in that moment I'm like, my life is going to be like this for however long it is. You know, this is the only way I'm going to feel. I think everybody feels that way. But it's like the only chance you have is to keep trying.
Mm-hmm.
You know, keep trying even a small thing. You know, I think the Japanese actually have this very, very appropriate cultural insistence on doing small things correctly. Just do it just right. Just this one tiny thing. There's the old military adage of make your bed, right? It's like you start the day by doing something correctly, you have a small win. It's like the humility that you have to continue pushing forward. And it's like, listen, the world, going home seems like an impossible endeavor. You're not going to be able to do something grand to get yourself out of a funk. You need to do something so tiny and meaningless to the average person, but such a tiny, small win to you that it's imperceptible to other people. But you're like, you know what? As shitty and pathetic as I am, I did that shit right. Like I wiped off that table just right. Fucking Lysol wipe in the trash, and I fucking nailed that one. You know, like that's it. That's what keeps us going as humans.
And I think that little bit of like humor that you can have in it as well, right? Where like you're almost joking with yourself. You're like, fucking did that right.
Fucking pathetic,
like,
but I got that.
Like I didn't fuck that one up, you know? It's like those tiny, and you're completely right. It's those tiny, tiny, tiny wins that nobody else is gonna know but you. And you have to have that self-respect enough to give yourself the kudos. And I think that's where so many people fail of giving themselves kudos or saying like, well, you're so fucking stupid or you're so dumb or, you know, the inner voice that we tell ourselves, that critic. It's like, allow yourself to win. Allow yourself, put something in place where you're like, I can do that. That's what I can do. Today I showered. I did it.
Today I showered.
When you're in a dark place,
Yeah.
That's the first thing that you don't want to do. You don't want to fucking shower. You lay in bed. I've been in those places, right? There's so much emotion. There's so many things to think about and worry about and depression. And, you know, you can go several days without showering. I've seen people, right? I'm like, when was the last time you showered? I don't know. Cool. Tomorrow, I want you to shower.
Right. The tiniest little thing.
Tiniest.
And it's almost like it's like the engine stops, right? You're this little engine just humming along from your childhood. It's like your parents are like, get in the shower, Mackenzie. And they're like, brush your teeth, Mackenzie. It's like they're slowly instruct you on how to just operate as a functional engine, not a high quality Ferrari, but like they're like, listen, these are the basic things you have to do. And when you go off the rails, it's like, you're like, okay, well, what happens if I don't shower? Like you start questioning even the fundamental operations of what you're just like, what the fuck happens? Guess what? Nothing happened. I didn't brush my teeth. I didn't shower. I don't give a shit. I'm going to eat ho-hos in bed for days. What's going to happen? And it's not, I find that it's not the ho-hos in bed and the not showering. It's, yeah, you stink. Whatever. You take a shower whenever you want. Spray a little Axe on you. It's whatever. Nobody fucking knows. Cut your hair short. It doesn't even matter, right? That's not the ho-hos. Like, you got to eat some calories. You're not going to get that fat. And like, yeah, it's going to be gross, but whatever. It's the complete derailment of the moving forward process, right? It's not the ho-hos. It's not the not showering. It's the fact that you're no longer turning the engine over. It's like I have detached from the train tracks. And the recommendation of like, hey, look, I just want you to shower. It's like, it's trying to jumpstart. It's like the lawnmower engine, right? Like just fucking turn over. Because if you shower, Maybe you'll shower again tomorrow. And if you start smelling not terrible, maybe you'll start being like, well, I was going to lie in bed, but now I'm like all clean. I don't, maybe I should go out into the world. The sunlight. And you go out into the world, you're like, oh, God. Oh, I forgot. It's nice out here. Like, it's warm. Like, sun on your skin. Not soon. It's going to be winter soon.
I
But,
know.
you know, it's that reintegration willingly back into society. Can I ask you something?
Yeah.
It's kind of a personal question.
Absolutely.
It sounds like you've attempted serious relationships. And when those come off the rails, in my experience, that's when relationships are bad for me. And it could be, you know, there's discord in my house or, you know, as a younger person, when I break up with someone, that's when I became incapable of continuing on in the same way. What did you do to get past that?
Started this podcast. It was, I knew for a while it wasn't the right relationship. And there was so many different things that, you know, I stayed in. I knew for a long time I was getting cheated on multiple times. We had conversations multiple times. There's a little part of it where I could understand where this was coming from. And so it was like, cool, I'm not just going to run away. Like, you need support, right? Like, you are a really dear friend to me, but like, these are the action items like that I need to see to continue to stay. And it was, you know, at times they would happen and then they would stop. And I was like, well, you're not trying anymore, right? Like, you have already given up. And so why am I continuing to put time and energy in something that you're wanting to give up for yourself? Like, I can't continue to do that for myself. So I ended up leaving him November of 21. And I had really lost, I would say, myself as well. And I was like, you know, you always talk to me about, like, what are my hobbies? Like there's multiple things I love to do. And I had lost that as well. And I was like, I just love talking with people. Like, why don't I start a podcast? It had been something I had talked with my aunt for several years about, of just like, I know I can have these really unique conversations with people. Why am I limiting only myself knowing them? And how can I get them out to the world? And the podcast obviously seemed the most easy, real, and kind of fast way to do it. And so I remember asking him, or not really asking him, but telling him, and I was like, oh, I'm going to start a podcast. Like, this is what I'm going to name it. And actually, Raw Thoughts was a song that he had sent me during our breakup. And I don't even remember like what the context of it was about. But I literally remember sitting, I was living at my sister's house. I had got all of my things out, and I was in the middle of getting my things out, and I was literally sitting on her toilet and listening to this. And I was like, Raw Thoughts, that's what could be the name to my podcast. Like, I wasn't thinking about like him. I was like, what else? I gotta get myself on a different train track, right? Like, I can't sit here and dwell. I can't, like, he's hurt you so bad. Why do you want to go back to that? You've gone back to that multiple times. And that's where I can feel people, right? Because you don't want to just leave and abandon them when they're going through something difficult. And there's so much complexity to this. And so I remember telling him, like, I'm gonna start this podcast. And he's like, that's fucking dumb. Like, why would you do that? Nobody ever makes it past this. And it was just all negative. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to leave you for good. And I'm going to start this podcast. I went on family vacation, and I continued to say it there as well. And there was this little phrase that the waiter had said continuously. And he was, you know, in the morning times, he was like, why not? Why not have Baileys and mimosas and Bloody Mary? Like, why not have it all, right? You're at an all-inclusive resort. Like, why the fuck wouldn't you, right? I'm like, cool, I want all of them. Like, I do.
Just
right?
put it in a
like,
bucket and just a big straw.
Right. Like, I'm like, here I am going through this fucking breakup, and I'm in Mexico, and it's beautiful, and it's like, why am I not happy for this? Like, I am. Like, I get to play with my nieces and my nephews in the water, and like, that's what's making me help get through these situations. Like, getting to talk with strangers, that's what's helping me get through these situations. Like, and I came home from that trip and I was like, so on that trip, we were there and we're like, what are we going to do for this year? Right. And I was like, I want to start a podcast. I want to be on YouTube. Like, this is what I really want to do. And my family, mind you, I was sick in a cabana, like some kind of bug down there. Water, I don't know. And my family's like, yeah, you should. Like, you'd be so fucking good at that. Like, blah, blah, blah. You know, I was like, cool. And so I came home. I found the studio. And a week later, I was starting my podcast. And I knew he didn't support me. I knew he challenged everything that I said. And I was like, cool. Easy way. I'm not talking to you. I'm not going back to that. But what I am doing is I'm keep going forward. And I've talked about it on this podcast where this honestly is what helped me continue to go. Other people were relying on me. I now had something that, like, it was mine. I started this. I came up with the idea. I started this. Where it's going is in my power. It is in my control. I get to make the decisions on where it's going to go. And so you have to fucking go for it. Like, why not?
Why not? Because most people are cowards. That's why not. Why not? Because most people just rather get drunk. Mm. That's why, like, the wine, this guy came up to me 5th of July and, you know, pulls up in his golf cart. Just got his beer in his hand. It's like, he'd been partying all 4th of July. And, like, look, don't get me wrong. Like, I had a couple beers on 4th of July, but I kind of swore off the whole, like, hey, let's make our lives wrapped around consumption because, like, that's all fun and great. It's like, no, it's really not. So he comes up to me and has all manners of material success in his life. And this is a story, like, as old as time. He's like, you know, I feel like there's something missing. It's like, of course there's something missing. There's struggle missing. Look at you. You're just continuing the party. You're on your golf cart because you can't be bothered to walk or, like, ride a bike around the neighborhood. Like, you got nothing going on. You're wearing a bro tank. You live in the giant house. You got to, you know, and again, this man is not a bad guy. I really like him. But it's like, well, of course, the reason you got here is because there's some version of you 10 years ago that was a complete fucking savage. And he did things that 99.999% of the world or U.S. population or whoever, humanity, wouldn't or couldn't do, right? You have all this success athletically and professionally, all of these things. That's who you are. And now look at you in a golf cart with your C-, you know, like, what do you, like, of course you're not feeling fulfilled. You're a goddamn savage. And you've surrounded yourself with padded walls. And as you go on vacation, it's like, what are you going to do on vacation? I'm going to get trashed from 8:30 on. That's what I'm going to do. It's going to be great. And then I'm going to come back to my shitty, bloated ass life where I feel like trash. I'm like, oh, I wonder why I'm not happy from my vacation. Maybe because your vacation was just checking out from all the fucking problems and adding some to them. Because now you're hungover and like 5 pounds heavier, retaining water and shit. Right. It's like, and I told him, I was like, that the problem with what you're going through is the areas in life where you are most fulfilled and most content and respected yourself the most were the times in your life when you threw yourself into the furnace and something came out of that, right? Who you were came out of it. Successes and failures in hell. The saying that adversity makes the man, right? I have an appreciation for that, okay? But the other piece of that I think is neglected is adversity doesn't just make character. Adversity reveals character. And there are times in my life as a younger man when I feel really bad about who I was, right? About my ability to keep up with the complexities of life. You know, essentially from 18 on, it was like I was on my own, and that was really rough, and I made a lot of bad decisions. But recognizing that regardless of the shit decisions I did, who I became, who came out of that, it's like, well, you obviously weren't a horrible person or completely irredeemable, because this is who you were under those pressures. You know, like, you didn't fold, or you didn't fold completely, right? Like, no matter what, you were standing kind of at the end of all of this. And to your story, it's like, here's this person, wheels completely come off, betrayed, neglected, lied to. You're like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to focus on other people in one of the most difficult ways I can, which is starting a creative endeavor and putting my face out into the world for complete judgment and criticism weekly. Like, fuck, dude. It's so hard to do. Yet you did it.
Yeah.
And that, I mean, it seemingly pulled you through it. It's like, stop focusing on your fucking drink at 8:30 and start figuring out if you can help somebody else.
Yeah. And I think that's what, you know, a lot of this comes down to, is like, how can I help somebody else, right? Like, how can I can help somebody else by bringing these stories out and really being able to connect with humans and going to that deeper conversation, you know, and there's so much relief that I feel with my guest afterwards, and they tell me that, right? We're like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize I needed to, like, get my story out there. And, like, even you just going through all of these things, I'm like, holy fuck, yeah. Like, I was not in a good place, you know, but I put myself in an even harder situation, because I was like, I know I can get through this. You know, I know that I'm a good person. I know that I deserve better. I know that, you know, there's something more out there for me also. And was I perfect in that relationship? No. Did I learn from that relationship? Yes. That's what I ask of myself. That's what I think we can all ask of ourselves. And, you know, there was so much of, like, excitement, you know, and in serving other people. I think when people lose, you know, you talking about that guy with this glorious house and this, you know, golf cart, and it's like, but how is he pouring into other people?
Right.
He's probably not. Right. He's wanting everything for himself. You build an empire by serving other people. You give yourself purpose by serving other people, because at the end of the day, it's like, if I was to die alone with a mansion and all of these cars, like, what did I give to the world? What did I give to other human beings in this lifespan that I have? I was a jackass. Most of those people are, right? They're so focused on the dollars and the amounts and, you know, this and I love people that are able to, you know, have these things, but what is at their core? What is at their mission in life? Is it to just continue to get the next best thing? I've had a lot of people on here, you know, ex-Major League Baseball players. Like, I've had the cars. I've had, you know, the materialistic things that society tells you that you need. But what I was missing was purpose.
Right. Like, who's going to be at Bezos's funeral?
Yeah.
Right? And again, I don't know, but it's so difficult to envision somebody who's built such a empire. It's like, yeah, look, he gave us Amazon Prime, same day delivery. Like, okay, great. Like, from a consumer standpoint, great. But, like, I don't care about the guy. Right. And to give up what you would have to give, like, my relationship with my wife and my kids takes so much of me to actually do it right the way I want to and the way I think they benefit most. I get in these arguments with these my students, like 16 or 17, like, got a girlfriend or some shit. It's like, it's so funny. I remember being like, I love her. It's like, God, stop. I'm like, you guys are this is just playtime for you. They're like, no, you're not. You don't even know. Like, I love him. I love him. I'm like, okay, I believe you love him. I'm like, but why? You're just with him because it's fun. They're like, no. I'm like, yeah, you are. Because first off, if he didn't make you laugh when you met him, you wouldn't be with him. So, like, okay, that's true. And you go down this list. It's like, this is literally fun for you. When it's not fun, you're going to stop it because you're 16. And they're like, oh. Like, the point of a relationship, point of marriage, is so when you're dying on your deathbed and your hand is clutching another human being's, they look at you and say, as long as I draw breath, you will live in my heart, right? And then you die knowing that you're still with them, right? That's the point of marriage, right? And then you work that back. How do you get there, right? Like, what have you gone through? Because I mean, if you just have a marriage centered around going on vacation, it's going to be hard to be clutching that hand. So it's like, all right, you make people. You made people, good for you. You made people. It was fucking hellacious and horrific and just dirty and nasty and raw. It's incredibly raw, right? So it's like, and you need somebody who's going to be in the shit with you through hell, where you look at each other at 9:30 at night and you're like, oh, fuck, what happened today, right? And you have a sense of humor, and then you promptly pass out because the fucking wave is crashing on the beach in 8 hours, and like, here it comes, man. Like, you can't stop it. And you work back and you work back and you work back and you work all the way back to when you're 16 and it's just fun. It's like, yeah, you need fun in your life, but that's not why we go through this shit. That's not why you should actually care. You should care because you need to find someone who will be clutching your hand in 50 years as you die. That's what a relationship is. That's what human connection is. And so much of the other stuff that people just fill in there, it's like, dude, what are you doing? This is not like... Your wife is not going to be clutching your hand because you bought her a big house. Like, she's probably going to be clutching your hand because you were like there when she got sick, or like you saved the kids when you got hit by a car. Like, those are the things that, I don't know, it's almost so cliche. But it's like, how is it people forget this stuff? How is it that we've gone to the point where it's like, wow, this is a novel concept for some people?
I think because we're so consumed and people are so consumed with social media and comparison and what do other people have. And I think we are at a mass amount of keeping up with the Joneses and not being able to look inward and say, what the fuck have I done? Like, where am I? Like, I am so proud of myself from where I was 3 years ago. Like, do people actually stop and think about that? No. They're scrolling. They're on to something else. They're on an argument. They're worrying about something in the future. They're worrying about something in the past. They're not able to sit there and just say, wow, like, where am I?
Right.
What have I gone through?
At the beginning of this year, I was actually in a really, really dark spot. January 1st came around. I remember distinctly, I was on the couch upstairs and lying there just like, dude, what are you doing? Like, what has happened? I won't go into why exactly, but the bottom line is I came back to that, right? It was something that I knew would get me through this point. It was like, listen, you've worshipped false idols, right? You've gone after ease. You've gone after fun. You've gone after these other things. Where are you going to offer the most value in the world? Whatever that is, do that as hard as you possibly can. And you have a shot at seeing your way through this. And I did. For me, it has always been training. And, here I'm like 41. Like, fuck it, I'm going to train twice a day. I'm going to be a damn gorilla. I don't give a shit. Right? Like, and I've been a black belt for over 9 years. Like, I don't have anything to prove to anyone. Right? I've done plenty of pro fights. Like, none of it matters. But it's like, fuck it. Like, go in there and be a goddamn gorilla and help every single person you train with. Make sure when you leave training, you're training hours a day, that people leave, they're like, oh my God, thank you so much for coming. And I did that. And it was horrific. Like, my hands are fucked up. I'm just like, the joints and ligaments can't do what they're supposed to do. And it's like, I don't give a shit. I'm going anyway. It's 5:30, the alarm goes off, you're training by 6, you're back at noon, you're killing yourself. And it's through that, the engine turns over again. It's through that, you're like, oh fuck, I can't help somebody.
Yeah.
The darkest place is feeling you can't help somebody. What have you done? You keep saying it. What have you done? Yeah, who have you helped? Don't tell me how you helped yourself. Who have you helped?
And I think that's, one of the biggest things of like, sometimes people don't understand, I would say, the complexity to this podcast is like, well, why are you doing it? It's like, do you not understand? Like, we don't have these raw conversations. Like, you don't get them from the news. You don't get them from social media. Like, you're getting, once again, this keeping up with the Joneses. Like, oh, does your social media feed, like, all look the same? Like, no, it doesn't, because I'm not all the fucking same.
Right.
Does all your fonts match? I'm like, no, because what if I like this fucking font? Like, No. Like, quit comparing yourself to other people, you know? And like, even for you, it's like, I wouldn't know that that would have gotten me out of my rut. I know for me, it's like hiking. Like, where I was having this conversation this morning is like, I'm making these journals and really like telling people, right? We can talk about like what's in your toolbox, but you have to stop and you have to figure out what the fuck is in your toolbox. Like,
Right.
what have you not been doing, and where do you need to get back, and where do you find joy, and where do you find humor, right? Like, why are we not laughing at the dumb shit we do? I don't get mad at me. Like, the other day, I don't know, I was looking for like mayonnaise in the fridge or something, and I was like, what? Oh,
Did
it
you
was,
say mayonnaise? I
yeah.
thought you said mayonnaise. I was like, what the fuck is mayonnaise?
No, I think it was dressing or something. I don't know. And I was like, what the fuck? Like, I know it's in here, right? Like, I'm getting like frustrated. I can't find it. I'm like, I know it's in here. And I was like, oh, silly. It's right there. Right? Instead of saying like, oh, you fucking retard, it's right there. It's like, oh, you silly. Like, change that narrative in your mind. Like, I laughed about it. I was like, what would my dad say? Like, are you even looking with your eyes? You know? Like,
Oh my God.
but that
Oh.
makes me laugh, right? Like, it makes me laugh because it's like, fuck, no, I wasn't. Right? And there's so much of, you know, within like, you know, Matt Schneider, within that Ubuntu community, with teaching people, like I can teach people how to have these conversations. I know I can because I've seen it happen. And one of my biggest, you know, motivations is like, I taught about raw communication, like being real, authentic, and willing to share. What does that actually look like? And it was a police officer out of California. And I was like, you know what your wife wants? Like, your wife wants to know your feelings and your emotions. They don't want to know the really difficult, like, tactical decisions you had to make for today, or what, you know, citation or law you did or whatever. And he listened and he tried it, and he went home, and there was another officer that had retired, got cancer, and he went home and he's like, you know what? He's like, I'm not worried about having my life taken away on duty. He's like, I'm afraid about the years afterwards. And he had that conversation with his wife. And his wife was like, where the fuck is, where is this coming from, right? Like, these are your feelings. These are your emotions. And he saw that he was able to get support from her. And he saw that now she's like interested. She's asking these questions, and how great it felt for him to be able to open up about this. And I asked the other day in the coaching group was like, what's been one of your biggest takeaways? And he said that. He's like, my marriage has been able to get better because I'm actually raw with her. Our date nights and in these communications and in life, I can see where this is actually working. And I was like, that is what I want to give to people. That is what I want to be able to let people know is like, you can talk to a stranger. Like, you don't have to trust everybody, but you could love everybody. Like, I love everybody in a different way, in a different form. It's not like I'm in love with them. It's not like I'm now going to tell them a part of my life that's, you know, maybe sensitive and think that they're going to figure out where I live and they're going to come and stalk me or what, you know, all of the things. Like,
Wow.
you just fucking say it and you move on. And what are they going to do with that information? I don't do anything with the, you know, like, I don't sit here and be like, oh my gosh, that conversation I had with a stranger 5 years ago at Flying M, I hope their life is terrible. No. I'm like, gosh, that conversation 5 years ago at Flying M, like, wonder where they are. I hope they're good.
Right. But people don't like to be naked. Like, that's what you're talking about. Like, they just full of exposure, right? Like, that's the original story of man, like the Adam and Eve. It's like, you're naked. Now you know you're exposed. And you run for cover. Like, like the number one thing. That's why it's so horrific for people. They have that dream, that classic dream of like being naked in front of people. It's because you're exposed. You don't even want to do that with your partner. You know, like, it's... And you are right that it's one of those things that if people can do it, they become... Like, that's... I was talking to a friend, actually, on the way here about porn addiction. And look, porn addiction is something that I think the world has very much become desensitized to, and we're desensitized to it, and we at the same time know that it's a huge problem, right? We don't really worry about it that much until it bites us in the ass.
Mm-hmm.
But the point, like at the core of I think intimacy for a lot of guys is like, I just need connection. Now, look, maybe you got some kinks that are crazy too. Like, none of my affair. Everybody's got them. I'm not a fan of fishnets, but maybe somebody is, right? Like, it's not my thing. But like, that's in my experience. Again, porn in particular. Theo Vaughn had a very interesting take on this from years back. He's like, I feel like watching porn is putting somebody else's fantasy into my head. He's like, and I want to entertain my own fantasies. I want to engage with my own desires and preferences. And I actually want them with someone who wants to be there, right? Like wanting that real connection, man, it's so difficult because you really can't have that connection unless you're naked, unless you actually tell them like, hey, I really want the fishnets, right?
And that can be literally converted to like social media, right? Like you're watching somebody else's fantasies and they're getting into your brain. But do you ever fully stop and you're like, is that what I want? I don't know. Do I like that? I don't know. I just go with it, right? Some people are just like, well, I don't know. But they never voice like, hey, I don't like that. Or, hey, I want more of this. And I am in that crossroads with a male right now where I'm like, hey, like it's either going to go this route or this route. I need for myself, like, one, to have these conversations because you don't know what I like or don't like. You don't know what fulfills me or doesn't fill me. It is my duty to voice that. It is my duty to not let somebody walk all over me. And it could be the simplest things as, because I know I've done this for years where I'm like, I just want to be the easygoing person.
Low maintenance. You want to be a low maintenance chick.
I'm the low maintenance chick, right? Like we go out to a restaurant and you're like, oh, just order whatever, I'll eat whatever, which most of the times I will. Like really most of the times I am a very laid back person. But there are times where I'm like, oh, this actually sounds good, right? Like, oh, but they can't fucking read my mind. I have to be the one to tell them, hey, you know what? Normally I like this pizza, but you know what? I don't know. Something feels a little different today. I want this one. Like that's communication. That's like, I can feel safe telling you like, hey, I know that I used to want this, but now this is switched. Or you come up with an idea and it's like, an idea for a vacation even. And I'm like, I don't know. That doesn't like really feel right. But what if we did this also? Like you have to bring up, and this is anything in life, problems to get to solutions. You have to bring it up. And then somebody else can challenge that. Somebody else can accept it. Or somebody else could change it. And this person hasn't always maybe thought of that. And they're like, oh, wait, whoa, I never thought about that. Let's change this, right? And then the second person is like, oh, yeah, I didn't even think about that. Like, what if we did this? Now we're like playing like, I read this in a book the other day. It's called Idea Sex, where it's like, now we're going back and forth. Right? Now we're having this connection over something in the middle and we're kind of bouncing ideas off of each other. But where did it start? It started with somebody being vulnerable and bringing that topic up. Simple.
Right. You have to be naked with your thoughts, right? Real honesty, right? You're raw, you're authentic, you're sharing. And that allows the other person an opportunity to either screw you and say they don't care or, whatever, or engage in that kind of, when you're talking about negotiations, it's what you were saying is like, okay, well, like I have to be comfortable enough to divulge that, hey, maybe I want to try this pizza. And I think there's just real intimacy in both sides of it because letting somebody else drive, it's like, hey, look, whatever you want to do, whatever pizza you want to have, whatever you're into tonight, like we'll do that. And allowing give and take in all of those different areas. Could be pizza, could be in the bedroom, could be whatever. When I was moving up here, we decided we were going to move abruptly, and for a myriad of reasons. But I came up, found a house, got into contract went back home, and my father-in-law actually was like, hey, tells my wife, he's like, you should well, like, let me know when you want to go up and check out the house and blah blah blah. And my wife, to her credit, was like, I don't need to. I trust that it's fine. And my father-in-law freaked and was like, what do you mean? You've never even, like, what are you talking about? Like, of course. She's like, no, I trust him. I think it's going to be fine. And this was a very stressful situation. We were not like, oh yeah, this is, it was like, no, we really gotta, like, this is the big thing. And just, what's that saying that it's like everything in life is about sex except sex, which is about power. It's like that exchange and give and take and willingness to relinquish power and then willingness to ask for power. And like, it's such a different, as a young man, it's like, for me, it's like sex was sex, right? And like, find a hot girl. And,
Right.
you know, I dated people. I was not like very, polyamorous, right? Like I was very much into monogamous relationships, but it's like, yeah, you know, like awesome. And now it's like, well, I've been married for a long time, but people had alluded to things being different, you know, not just physical, but like intimacy outside of the physical nature is just different. Like intimacy is like making a cup of coffee just fucking right. And like just when you need it. And like, cause it's feeling seen, it's feeling exposed, it's feeling like somebody gets you. And that used to be, you know, just through sex, like when I was in college and stuff. It's like, oh yeah, that was great. But now in a real relationship, it's like, oh man, it's her knowing when I really, really want pasta, and I didn't even know it, but like she knew what my desires, like my heart longing was, and she could do that thing for me. Yeah, man, what a weird transition in life.
It's a very, I feel like being 31, it's that weird like transition from old relationships that were like that, where it's like, oh, we connected because of sex, and then then life evolved right after that. And I think in the world today, and people are so guarded because of their past and because of their darkness and because of their struggles. And then there's me, I'm like, but that's part of you. Like, allow me, like even if it doesn't work out, guess what? Like, I'm not just gonna like abandon you. Like, do we have to have the same type of relationship? No. But like, if you don't try to screw me over, then like we can still be friends. Like, I'm still friends with my high school sweetheart. We got together when we were 14. And I actually thanked him like probably like 2 months ago. And I was like, thank you for being a good human to me when I was that young. Like, thank you for just being there when I didn't even know that I needed somebody there for me. And like, to be able to realize that, where it was like, that wasn't sex. That was a true connection at that age. Right? Like, and I think the world is where it's like, you want immediate connection. Where does immediate connection come from? Usually sex. And it's this hard thing to go further and be like, you know what? Like, I want to be able to go out to coffee with you and have, like you said, enjoyment of like, it doesn't have to be this, I don't know, touchy-feely thing all the time. But like, I want you to be able to touch my soul. Like, I know I need conversations in my relationship. I know that. Why? Because I've been in relationships where that hasn't been, and I have felt so unlike myself. And even with the podcast, I know I get these deep conversations, but I want those deep conversations with the person that I know that if I go out in public and I can trust him, and I can give him that power, and him not misuse it, and he can give me that power and not misuse it, and I think it's glorious. Like, yes, you and your wife have had those struggles, but she's like, he's got it. Like, that is so much faith also within your relationship, within you guys as individuals. You're like, no, he's got it. And if it wasn't great, like if you had concerns, I'm sure you would tell her, hey, I don't know about this. What do you think? And then her opinion comes in. Her ideas come in.
Right. it's so dark, right? Like we're all so dark, like you're pointing out. I feel the relationship I feel really you're referencing, 14, this person saw me, right? Like they really saw me. And maybe it was by accident, but like you were seeing. And there's a beautiful show, Fleabag, where like she keeps breaking the fourth wall and like looking at the camera. And then the person she falls in love with is, this priest who keeps seeing her as she, observes the audience. And he's like, "Who are you looking at?" And she's like, "Whoa." Because again, whoa, oh my God, the other characters didn't see that. I feel bad about the times in my life where I now see the person I was engaged with. There was this girl in college that I dated. I dated her for several years, and she had this real shit hand dealt her. She was a good person, but her parents had this poor relationship that imploded, and his dad had this affair, and the mom was a little rough too, and really kind of dragged the daughter into it, and it was this nasty thing. So she had this great fear and distrust of men. And I see now this like struggling 20-year-old that was afraid that I was going to treat her poorly, or that I was going to cheat on her, or that all these things. And that came out in all these different ways. And then I see the fucking idiot 20-year-old I was, totally incapable of giving that space and giving her obviously whatever she needed. I wasn't giving her. Like we would get in fights all the time. I remember looking out the window in a car one time. I saw a Hawaiian license plate. I was in Berkeley. I was like, fuck Hawaiian. So I look over here and she starts screaming at me. She's like, "I'm in the car. You can't just not look at that girl. I'm in the car." I'm like, "No, I was looking at the," and like, boom, we're in this huge fight. And in reality, what I should have done instead of arguing with her is just reached across and grabbed her hand. Like, here's somebody going through something. And I just really don't want to make that mistake in my marriage. I want to make sure that my wife feels seen. I want to make sure the people I interact with feel seen, and not just this reactive, ridiculous, squirrely. God, I was 20 at the time. I'm not 20 anymore. I'm like twice the man I was then. But how do you instruct your current self with blind spots that you had as a younger person? Because this is the thing I struggle with the most, where it's like, God, you were a piece of shit. I wasn't even that terrible. I didn't kill anyone. But like, there's no way to fix that. There's only some way I can glean some manner of reliable insight from that. Like, what is that for you? How do you navigate that?
I think there comes, it's a word that I definitely, put on it, where it's, you have to give yourself grace. Like, you didn't know what you know now. You only knew what you knew. And I think it's also the process of life. Like, when we're in our 20s, we're not supposed to have everything figured out. We're fucking 20 years old. Like, the longevity of life is like in your 80s. So you have another 60 years to figure shit out. Like, it's just like children, right? Like, we're still children. Like, we're still learning lessons.
Right.
We have not, like, for me, like, I want to try the new things because I've never done them. Like, and if people are like, "Well, why haven't you ever done them?" And I'm like, because look at everything else I've fucking done. I didn't have time for it yet. It just hasn't came my way. So I'm going to enjoy that this is the part in my life where it has came in and it's shown me, and I get to explore it, and I get to be adventurous. But like, I'm not going to get mad at myself because I didn't learn this 15 years ago. I didn't fucking learn it 15 years ago. I just learned it now.
Yeah, but in your memory, you're still 15 years ago. Like, when I consider myself as a 20-year-old, I don't envision in my mind's eye this like 20-year-old who just doesn't know. He doesn't know. Like, he doesn't see this person. He doesn't understand what's going on. Like, I don't envision that. I'm me in that vision. Like, I'm the 20-year-old again being an idiot. How do you remove, like, how do you just observe casually? Oh, no, that was me at 15. Hi, me at 15. Like, I can't remove myself from that shit. I can't, like, third person out of body experience, like, oh, look at that go. No, man. Like, that's me being a fucking asshole. Or that's me failing to grab this poor girl's hand as she's like having a complete meltdown. And the only thing I can think about is like how annoyed I am That's me.
But what have you changed from then to now?
Oh, everything. I'm not even the same fucking person. But in my mind, I am. In my memory, I am. I don't have an alternate memory where I'm watching it. My only memory of it is me acting it out. And now applying my principled, morally, what I would consider upstanding viewpoints and perspectives to this shit situation where I know what I did. Not like what I would do now, but I'm like, you fucking did that. Like, you shouldn't have done that for a number of reasons, but you did.
And I think you're talking about, like, I think it is something that I can do where it is, I put a different perspective on myself. I do literally wide-eyed, wide angle, like bird's eye view, replay this in my mind and be like, well, what was that going on? And what was going on in your life? And how did you make that decision? And what do you know now? And where are you going? And how did this impact? Like, it is a removal of yourself in your mind and a restructure of yourself. Are those memories still there? Absolutely. This is also something I was talking about this morning, and definitely in the first responder world is reframing, these calls. And I was talking about, a situation where I came across, my ex and I came across a gentleman that went into cardiac arrest in the middle of the road in McCall, super remote. And I remember I was just so angry about a lot of it. And I was so like, why me? Right? Like, why was I put in this situation? And yeah, there was several years, 2 years, I had to write it on paper. Like, what was in my mind of my perspective? And how can I then, so I wrote what I was feeling, what my frustrations were, where did I see these things, and then I literally removed myself and I rewrote that story like it would be in a movie. Like, if somebody was to read that journal, they could be like, action, we're playing this, right? And I gave myself grace for the other people, and I gave myself grace for myself. That lady didn't know. I was so frustrated. I was like, why the fuck would somebody walk away from somebody that is dead in the middle of the road? Like, you can start CPR, right? She didn't know. She freaked out. What do I know? I know how to do CPR. I know how to manage these scenes. Like, how great was it that I got to be the one that was there? I was mad for a long time. Like, why the fuck was it me? Why were we there at that time and moment? Because you needed to be. You needed to make those decisions. You needed to learn from those things. We're not perfect. And what that allowed me to do was truly be able to remove myself from what was occurring and now look at the positive. Why was I there? What was I able to offer? What are my gifts that I was able to deliver? What would have happened if I wasn't there? What would have occurred if I didn't, do the things that I did? And so I think even those situations, being young, right? Like, God, I could tell myself a lot of times, right? Like, why the fuck did you do that? I could do that with myself of my last relationship. I'm like, you fucking idiot. Like, you knew from the start this wasn't a good relationship. I could tell myself that. Absolutely. I could say, you know what? You saw something. That was your decision. That was your decision with what you knew at the time. Those were your feelings. What have we learned from that? Is everything perfect? Fuck no. Could we do everything right in this world? Absolutely not. So how do we still continue to go through life knowing that we're probably going to fuck up other things too? And you're probably not going to grab your wife's hand right when you need to. So how do we still continue to move forward? We have to give ourselves grace. We have to give other people grace. We have to be at an understanding and meet people right where they are. And we also have to meet ourselves right where we are. Like, there's a lot of frustration, I would say, in my life right now over like 31, you're like, why the fuck can't you find a man? Like,
do you talk shit to yourself like that?
Yeah, sometimes. Like,
Why
that's a
can't you
critic.
find a man? What are they fucking like pushed back on the shelf at Whole Foods? What do you mean? Why can't you find a man? What does that mean?
I think I like, for me, it's like standards, right? Like I don't get mad at myself for that, but it's like I think of it as like, where in my timeline am I going to like go to the next step? Like, where's the next phase of life, right? Like, I do want to be a mom one day. Like, so in this time frame, it's like, gosh, like, why don't things work out, right? Like, I know I'm a good person, like, and just shit happens. Like, you trying to find a new job, right? Like, some people are like, God, why the fuck can't I find a job right now? Or like, why the fuck isn't this promotion happening?
Oh my God. And then everybody tells you the second you stop looking is when you're going to find it. Shut the fuck up. Oh my God. Don't hold on too tight to the handful of sand you'll lose. Shut the fuck. Like, God, you're not helping. You're not that. Okay, so stop trying. So that's your answer? No, you're just, I mean, yes, but no. Like, oh gosh.
Well, and then I think it's like, then I'm like, God, like, how many more lessons, like, are you going to give me before, like, how many more challenges are you going to give me? You know, like, those I think are the conversations that I have with myself, and me too has to like stop those and be like, what are you doing for yourself today? What are you doing to better prepare yourself for the next man? What are things that you can work on? What are things that, you know, you can, I would say, like, better for when you do meet that person? Cool. Let's work on those things.
What are you working on?
Cooking.
If I can ask.
Yeah.
Cooking.
I'm like,
Are you
I don't
making
know-
sourdough bread?
Not yet. I don't have enough time for that. But like, but just like little aspects where it's like, okay, well, what am I working on? Like, you know, I have conversations with people. I go to therapy still once a month. You know, like the gym. I've increased my yoga, and I'm like, I literally looked at myself in the mirror today naked, and I was like, fuck yeah, girl.
Fuck.
Like, I am proud of you. Like, look at, whoa, right? Like, we don't look ourselves in the mirror. We're like, God, you're still that fucking weight or this or that. Like, when was the last time you gave yourself a compliment?
I mean, it's been a little while. I'm not a big compliment on Matt guy. Yeah, no, certainly not with looking at myself in the mirror. Certainly not. Yeah, it's the things I work on. I try to hit things that no one can see, like keeping my voicemail box empty. Right, it's like at this point, I'm like, listen, you know the things you can't fucking get done for whatever reason. Like, it's not even a problem. Like, who cares? Well, I care because I can't, like, and I'll miss a call or I'll like leave a voicemail to do something. All of those little things. It's like I can't do big things. I try to like keep my hair cut. I can't. I got a thing with going to like sports clips. I can't keep it cut just right. And I don't know. Yeah, I should do that more. I should attempt to compliment myself more.
What is one compliment you could give yourself right now?
Stop it. Don't do this. Don't right
We're
now.
doing it.
Oh my God. Why?
Just one.
Uh,
Because I'm also like wanting to show people like how difficult it can be for yourself, right? Like, we talk about these darknesses, we talk about this inner work, we talk about like, we can give people compliments all day long, but like, I'm the only one going to bed truly with myself in my thoughts. Am I sitting there and be like, you could have fucking done this better, you could have fucking done that better, blah blah blah, you should have done this or you should have done that? Or I'm like, cool, like, okay, that happened, what are we gonna do next time?
all right. Here's something that I really struggle with. I have a very dear friend who I happened to see recently, who's very, very good at jiu-jitsu. He's very, very good. And I saw him, and it's difficult for me because part of me still remembers being like a white belt and a blue belt and coming up through the jiu-jitsu world and really looking up to this guy. But the struggle I have is that although he is very, very good at jiu-jitsu, he has made a lot of poor personal decisions to the point where his personal relationships with his family are very bad. And I was talking to a different friend about him, saying like, this is something that I experienced recently, and it's very tough because I'm very conflicted. He's like, well, do you feel like he's just a piece of shit? Like, do you want to tell him? Like, what's the issue for you? And for me, I'm like, you know what? Honestly, at this point in my life, I just have a lot of compassion for him. I feel really bad for him. Not just that, perhaps his wife left him or something like that, but I feel bad for him because he obviously was otherwise incapable of getting a hold of his squirrely self and making better decisions that led to better relationships. And it's not about getting upset at the bad decisions. It's, for me, having compassion for him and recognizing that he's probably not happy and he probably knew the decisions he was making were bad. And he made them, and now he has to live with that. And I could only imagine how hard that is for him. It's not taking anything away from what he actually did, right? But I see people hurting everywhere. And for me at this stage in my life, it's like, I do have compassion, and I do like that that's what I go to. I don't go to like, well, he did it to himself, or like, well, she did it to herself, or like, well, the whole like pull yourself up. It's like, yeah, look, I think there's a degree of we make the world we live in, but I also really feel for people who have been otherwise incapable of making the better decisions.
I think that's a wonderful compliment.
Well, thank you. That works.
Because, I mean, that is something that I wouldn't know, right? You know that. You know that that's what you tried to do.
Right.
I can't give you the compliment of that.
That's a very interesting perspective. It's probably that probably validates that compliment a little bit more because no one else would know it. Yeah, you would never know.
Boom. Mic drop,
Boom.
Matt.
Gotcha, bitch. What's a compliment you give yourself besides looking at yourself naked in the mirror? Because I definitely wouldn't know that.
You would never know that, right?
I would never know.
But it's like, also, it's not just looking in the mirror. It's like, okay, doing the yoga, doing the gym, like all of these things, right, are building my interpersonal skills for myself. But one of the compliments that I don't know if I like do it all the time. Like, I don't just sit there and like compliment myself, like, "Oh, Mackenzie, you're doing so wonderful," right? Like, that's not that's not. But like, I compliment myself of like, when I know something's funny, like, I will fucking laugh. When it's not, like, I'm not laughing.
You don't give a courtesy laugh?
No, that's not being me real. Like, I'm like, it could be funny to somebody else, but it's not me.
Oh my God, I love that. I love your compliment to yourself so much more than mine. Oh shit, that's so good. Have you just deadpanned someone recently? They say like some dumb joke, you're like, I'm sorry, was that the punchline? Like what?
And people can think like, okay, like sometimes, like if you just automatically laugh, right? That means that you also understand it. Sometimes I don't understand them. So I'm not going to sit here and laugh when like I think it should be funny, but I'm like, you could call me stupid, right? But I'm like, I don't get it. Like, explain it to me. And then maybe I'll laugh, or I'll just be like, that wasn't funny to me. Like, or like I didn't get humor out of that. We all have different humors. Like,
you're not that fucking clever. I don't know what to tell you. Like, dude, I have to fake laugh with my kids all the time. I have a 7-year-old who's like, knock, knock. I'm like, who's there? He's like, splat. Splat who? Splat you. Oh! And I just have to fucking, oh! Just, why'd the chicken cross the road? Because he wanted to. Oh! Like, I just, like, being a dad is just fake laughing all the time. And hopefully, like, sometimes they stumble on actual humor. You're like, oh shit, that was funny.
My niece always gives me jokes. Like, she is a jokester for sure. And there's times where, like, she tells me a joke and I just don't laugh. Like it's not hurting her feelings. It's just like, okay, that was funny. Like, okay, next one. Like, that wasn't too funny.
How old is this niece? How old is
she's
this?
9.
And you straight up just deadpan her jokes.
I don't like deadpan her, but I'm just like, maybe it makes me smile, right? But it doesn't make me laugh. Like, oh, that was cute, like that was funny. Like, but I'm not like sitting there like hysterically laughing. But when it is truly funny and she knows that I'm hysterically laughing, like she knows it was a good one. Like it I didn't fake it for her, right? And maybe this is also because like I haven't had my own children. I don't have my own children. I love being an aunt. Like being an aunt is like one of my favorite things truly in life. Like of all ages, even other people's kids. Like I truly love kids. And like it's fun. It's fun to like not always give it. Like not always laugh at every single joke.
You can't give it up so easy sometimes. Hey, do you laugh when kids fart?
For sure.
Oh, yeah.
Everything. Okay, so this same niece, funny joke. Oh my God. She did make me laugh really hard.
Because, by the way, if you have boys, you better fucking laugh your ass off when they fart. Because that's the only thing they want to do. They want to rip one and see you lose it. And if you pretend it smells, you probably will. But if you pretend, that's even better.
And I think those like that
lock the windows in the car and just die. Gotcha, bitch. And they're like, oh.
My EMT partner, there's so many stories right now, and we're so over time, but I don't care. My fucking EMT partner, we would be driving, and his fart stunk so bad.
It's the kale craze. Just stop with kale.
God.
Nobody fucking likes you, kale. You're the Karen of the vegetable world.
No shit. We were driving way remote into like up towards Pine. And he fucking just rips one and he locked the windows. I was like, motherfucker, get me out of this. And I get the window rolled down and literally my head's out the fucking window, okay? Fucking deer runs. I was like, oh my God, I almost died from your fart and from this fucking deer that almost took my head off. Like, what in the fuck are you doing? Like, and he's just dying there laughing. Like for sure. Like, I laugh at that, but like, oh, men and their farts. Like,
don't you? Okay, but like, don't you think that level? Okay, so level 1 and 2 fun. Level 1 fun is like you're doing something that's overtly fun. Like you go to a trampoline gym. Yeah. I don't know if they're that fun, but whatever. You do something with the intention of having fun. Level 2 fun is like I ran 30 miles and almost died, and then a week later I'm like, wow, that was a time of my life. You have the same thing with level 1 and 2 funny. Like level 1 funny is a knock-knock joke. Level 2 is like I ripped one, locked the windows, and then you almost died from a deer. Like I live for level 2 fun. Like let's take it to the fucking edge of hilarious. And you know, like to be a parent, I think you have to successfully be like, oh fuck. Like 9:30, like I can't believe we survived. That was a barn burner.
Oh, about my other story with the
I'm
niece.
sorry.
No, you're good. Like I just love her so much. And I think it's because out of all my nieces and nephews, she reminds me the most of me. Her and I look fucking identical. Her and I's humors are fucking identical. Like I just see a younger me where like I feel like I'm like we just have this connection, right? I have a special connection with all of the kids. Anyways, so
that's what somebody who picks favorites always says. I have a special connection with it. No, you fucking don't. You have a favorite.
I think I have favorites in different ways. Like, because they're all different kids. They all, like, I think that's also seeing other people's uniqueness. Is like, okay, I know that something's going to matter to one of them that's not going to matter to the other. Like, that's you just knowing, right? Anyways, so we're talking about this whole, like, increasing my feminism. You know, it was my grandma's 80th birthday, and I was like, what do you want? And she's like, I want a pineapple upside down cake. And I was like, I don't even know that you like that. And she's like, will you make it? And I was like, absolutely. She's like, have you ever made one before? I was like, nope, but I'll try. Okay. So we're making this cake, and my niece she's helping me. We're making it, all the things, and she's on, the stool, and she whispers over to me. She goes, do you have any Miralax we could put in this?
Oh my God, yes. Did you do it?
No. And I was like, fuck. I was like, we don't know.
Oh my God.
But I was like, the fact that you just like came up with that.
Oh, your niece for the fucking win.
And I was just like, oh my God. I was like, I can't not tell everybody this. Like, this is fucking hilarious. Like, I think it's hilarious that she came up thinking that of like, ha, we're gonna make everybody shit their pants.
That's fucking great. My boys are not that smart.
Oh,
like they're not. They would never come up with like, how can we make people shit themselves?
Yeah.
Like they're funny, but not that funny.
Oh,
See,
yeah.
that's level 2 funny.
She's level
that
2
bitch
funny.
has got it.
She does.
Oh, yeah.
She does. I'm like, nobody fucking like take this away from her. Because even my birthday card, okay? My birthday was earlier this month. She got me, she's the one that found it. It's this fucking girl that has red hair and she's doing yoga. And, you know, and I was doing a yoga class the day for my birthday. And she finds it and it was like something about like the older we get, blah, blah, blah. When you open it up and the fucking girl's doing yoga farting. And this is...
It's like a rainbow.
and it says something about like the older you get, the more likely you're able, or the more likely you would fart in public. And it's like this yoga girl just like I was like, and she's just laughing. And
dude, talk about being naked. Like that's one of like I found out that my wife didn't want to sleep over at my house because like she was afraid, or it was something like she couldn't sleep. It was like, bottom line is she didn't want to fart in front of me. And it's like, that's the original intimacy. It's like, look, this is me. This is all I fucking got. Like, I'm trying my best. I floss mostly a couple times a week. Like, I'm doing my best. That's it. This is the best you can hope for. Listen, I know we're out of time. You probably have to wrap this up.
I do. Oh my God. I appreciate our time so much. All of the diversity in our questions. Is there anything, like one last thing that you would love to just leave our listeners with today from our conversation?
The most value I've had about myself, valuing myself, is when I could bring the most to other people. And that was it. And the times I've felt shitty and bleh, I haven't gone into this spiral of contemplating my belly button and self-exploration. It's like, cut the shit, bring value to someone else's life, and then you'll be a valuable person. That's it.
I love it. I love it. Listeners, thank you so much for joining on this journey with Matt today. It's been such a delight. I love conversations like these. Please reach out to us if you'd like to be on the podcast. If you found value in this podcast, please send me a message. Send me a message on Instagram, email me, text me. I don't give a shit. Like, tell me that this is value to you. Because as you listen, like I literally love getting to hear that and being able to give value to you guys. So thank you again for coming on for another podcast. I love you guys. Peace.